This is the 5-step guide to powerful process design. This is our monthly webinar for July 2014. My name is Ryan Lau, and I'm the CEO at energyhill. I look forward to going through this quickly. I know most of you are on lunch, so we'll try to move pretty quick. If you have questions, please post them, and John will get them over to me at the end of the webinar. Process design is actually a passion of mine. It's been something that I've been doing, I actually think most of my life, most of my adult life, but it's just something recently that I decided, you know what, this is actually something that there needs to be this talk done. And I think we'll do more about not just process design, but also the instrumental kind of support of it, which is project management. So let's move on. Today's talk will be about 5 different steps, and it's not really 5 steps to project management. There's actually a lot of different elements that go into process design and project management, but today's talk, we're going to talk about these 5. One is compelling forecasting, winning deadlines, resource planning, Rockstars versus Roadies, scope creep, and the project management Nirvana. It's not really sequential order as far as the steps go. It's more of some of these tactics could be used to help you in your organization or in your company or in your school. So that's really the focus of today's talk. At the end, we will have a QA session to answer any questions you might have. That's a little bio about me as well. All right. First of all, I want to address something. There is no crystal ball. A lot of people in project management say, you know, oh, forecasting, there's a secret to it. No, actually, there's not. You cannot forecast 100% accurate all the time, or even some of the time. So kind of keep that in the forefront of your thinking. If you're in an organization or a project that's just blown out of proportion, you're at your wit's end. Remember that as project managers, there is no crystal ball. All right. Use data to be as accurate as possible in your forecast, and always declare your degree of certainty. I see that happen a lot where the forecasting is done, there's no degree of certainty ever either addressed or stated. So make sure that when you're able to state a degree of certainty, you just state it. A lot of organizations will have different levels of certainty as far as, 25%, 50%, 75, 90%, whatever. Use your own matrices that make sense for your organization and state it. Data is the key when presenting a project's risk level. A project at risk can be prepared for by stakeholders, your team, when data and a degree of certainty is stated. Without it, you're going into the dark without any idea what's going on. Forecasting is predicting an outcome without historical observation. That's my definition. I think as planners, when we're building out a forecast for a way a project should go or a task should go, without knowing anything about historically what's happened or properly planning, you don't really know how it's going to end up. So the outcomes are unknown. 2 data types that I'm a fan of, I actually like most a mixed methodology, which is a combination of both of these, but the data types are quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative really focus on quantity. You have a data set or numbers attributable to the data. So it could be, the level of execution for this program or platform is 9, 8, 7, 4, 3, and you can figure out all those different numbers, what the average would be. So you actually have tactile, real numbers. Qualitative is more of an interview process, more of a data that is gathered through, typically it's interviews, but it could also be through focus groups, questionnaires. There's other ways you can gather that information, but it's more of an interpersonal data that you have to analyze with a kind of a different hat on. My approach is I like mixed methodology. I like having both at my will and back, so I can kind of make those decisions when it comes to forecasting based on those 2 different types of data. Here we have a shot of a guy climbing a mountain. The images will get worse as we go on, so enjoy this one. We call it Campaign Rock Climber. It's a fictional campaign, and this really is a kind of a illustration for a Gantt chart. The top bar is kind of the entire project. The next bar, this dark bar over on the left, is it could be planning, it could be pre-steps to the production. This could be a production bar, design, copy, whatever the task or project could be. The last one though is the one that really we care about, is hitting that deadline. It's the handoff deadline, or where you know, send it to the stakeholders or the client or the, you know, your boss or whatever. But that's the key that we really want to kind of focus in on. Never miss a deadline. I've heard that in every agency I've ever worked in, or every client, you know, that I've ever worked for, that we never miss deadlines, and that is so true. I believe in that. However, it's an approach that most take when project planning and building out a schedule. However, how can you take in everything else that comes in to a project? Yes, schedules help. Touch-based meetings help. Even having technology to support you with a cloud-based, you know, everyone can go here and plan, you know, see where they're at. All good things. However, what happens when that's not enough? Stakeholders might not read schedules. The staff that need to be present at touch-based meetings, they're MIA when you need them to be present. And relying on technology can be like relying on technology. We've had problems with technology, and you can never really rely on that, but that still doesn't mean you can't hit the deadline. And that's where I kind of want us to focus on, that is that the deadlines can still be hit, and it just goes, it just how we approach it. Clearly define the project. That's number one. If it's not clearly defined, you really don't know the direction you're going. So if we can clearly define projects, that's going to be really the most important step. Have formal and informal touches or meetings with people, especially when you know this department is not one to show up to meetings. If that's the case, go visit them. Say, hey, I'm going to stop by your area or your building to talk to you about how X, Y, and Z is going. Do you know that your deadline is next month? You know, just kind of almost a TLC is needed to keep them on point, and that's fine. So but be ready to, and also be ready to pick up the phone. That's something I think sometimes we shy away from, is that, oh, I'm just going to email and I'm done. Check, I've done my duty as far as process today. Sometimes you need a call. Do the extra effort, and that could mean the difference between them hitting their deadline or not, and eventually you hitting your deadline. Win the handoff. That's kind of the goal, is that get to that point where you actually, yes, we won the deadline, the handoff is out, we're on point. So, and that's culturally, our culture, we use that handoff bracketed term to really mean to someone that, hey, this is an important thing. This is, to me, I'm handing it off to you. If it's a race, this is now your race. This is you know, you're going to get us feedback, or you're going to take it to the next deadline. This is the handoff. So now I want you to meet my two little friends, Jane and Joe. And right now they're in a good mood because they're planning. They're at the fun part of a project where they're planning out the project and everything's going smooth. They're finding the resources. There can still be problems with that. And you've seen some of the statistics in the teaser video. The greatest asset a project can benefit from is a team of rock stars. I'm going to say something strange. Roadies are also needed. And what I mean by that is you could have a team of rock stars that are just dependable. 10 times out of 10, they're always going to hit their deliverable dates. They're always going to be proactive if problems are arising. They're on point. You also need the roadies. Now, you don't need, you know, one rock star and a bunch of roadies, but you need some of those people that will bring the fun to the project. Because burnout's going to occur, and if you don't have anyone that has fun doing it, and they're all robots and they just crank out the work, but there's no fun involved, it can really dampen a team or even an entire organization or department. Best approach for successful resource planning. Earlier I talked about the projects being defined clearly and simply. Here, projects' goals are defined. So just the goals. Steps to achieve them. So you're going to say, okay, Jane, you're going to do this. Joe, you're going to do this. Here's what needs to happen. Aligns, and that means you as a project manager or a leader, you align and ask nicely on what they, might need, or if they need extra help. And you plan for support. If one of your team members drops the ball, or they're sick, or life happens, you plan for backup. Okay, this person will be supported by this other person that knows the job, knows enough about the project, I can get them up to speed. And then it is our responsibility as project managers to track steps. How is everything going out throughout the project? Jane and Joe, all of a sudden now they hit creep. Again, these pictures are pretty bad, but they hit the scope creep or the scope change where everything now is at risk. Everything that was just mild risk, all of a sudden now major risk. Process design is sequential, so A leads to B, B leads to C, and so on and so forth. A project that is following an ordered sequence can still fail if scope creep or change is not addressed and managed. You have to be proactive in this regard. All we can do is manage it. Scope creep will happen, unfortunately, a lot more often than not. So it can be avoided. It cannot be avoided, but it can be managed. Steps to avoid scope creep or change are the following. Clearly communicate the original goals. I use this approach when I'm working with the stakeholders that, okay, here's what we originally planned for. Now we're doing this. And just kind of clearly throw it out there so they understand the change that's occurred. Sometimes when that's done, they might say, whoa, yeah, you're right. What was I thinking to add this? However, sometimes they might have a good point bringing this change or creep to the project because it's going to make it better. So it's something that as long as you're clearly communicating with the stakeholder or the decision maker, that's key. Outline changes and corresponding risks. What I mean by that is that's more of an internal with your team or the departments you're working with, that you outline all the changes and make it very clear, here's what's going on. And now, Department A, how is this going to add risk to what we originally had scoped for? And they'll take their feedback and make sure you're tracking everything. Offer phased approach. So now this is not ideal, but you can offer a phased approach. So what I mean by that is, hold on one second. I'm just going to cut and go over. I have no idea. I think it sounds like a college. Simmons? Nah. Let me just finish. Okay.
Yeah, let's just get this over with.
John, are you going to unpause? Scope creep. What I mean by scope creep is process design. Scope creep. Process design is sequential. A project that is following an ordered sequence can still fail if scope creep is not addressed and managed. All we can do is manage scope creep. It cannot be avoided. Steps to avoid scope creep or change: clearly communicate the original goals to the stakeholder or decision maker, or the leader or the client. To tell them, here's what we originally planned for, and now we've changed. And that, in some cases, it might be fine. In some cases, their plan makes sense, and we need to execute on it. In some cases, they'll see it and say, you know what? No, let's stick to the original plan. In some cases, it'll figure itself out. If not, and there does need to be change made, or creep is occurring or something, then you need to outline those changes and work with the internal team and get their feedback on the corresponding risks. So some of these changes might equal all of a sudden now deadlines are going to move or have to move, and they can't. And all of a sudden, here's the plan for what's going to be done. Offer phased approach. I don't really like this, but I have to put it in there because it's not ideal, but it can be done. And what I mean by that is we break it up into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's just one of those things that the project can then drag on for much longer, and more creep can occur because now we're in phases. It can be a rough approach to fixing creep or change. Overall, though, be heroes. Set that attitude of being a hero with your team. And kind of caveat to that is watch for leaders. As leaders, watch for burnout. So you'll see those individuals that, yes, they're being the hero, but they're burning out too. So kind of keep an eye out for that. Last but not least, that Jane and Joe, Nirvana. What is that project management for Nirvana that they're seeking? There's so much more and create a powerful design process for your organization. Really, I'm just scratching the surface. We're going to do more on project management. Remember, process design requires project management. Nirvana occurs when results can be shared with stakeholders involved. And by stakeholders, I don't mean the boss or the client or the team that's in charge. I mean all individuals. Everyone from the person working the late nights to the president or client, the lead person. This is all stakeholders involved. This last step is instrumental and often overlooked. There's an outspoken hoopla for work that has been done. I value this. I think that as managers, drafting that email, making it a template, sending it out, and calling out individuals by name that, hey, they just did a stellar job. Here's the hoopla that they're going to get. You don't need to use that word. It's kind of lame. But that's the word that I use. And just find a niche. Maybe it can be, you're the rock star of the week or what have you, or the rock star of that project. And then also along with that, have recap meetings. Sometimes it's, man, we need to implement this, whatever we did, in all of our projects to help them go more seamlessly. So recap meetings can be good and really informative. Last but not least, always be appreciative as the leader or project manager on your project. Thank you. It's easy, but sometimes we forget. We're so busy in this whether it's a design or architectural or educational environment we live in, we forget the quick, hey, you know what, I really appreciate it. Thank you for that. Sometimes even sending a card. I know, a card. But if it can't, if it's just too crazy, send a quick email, call someone out, and say thanks. All right, that's it. Hopefully it wasn't too painful, and hopefully it was quick. Do we have questions, John? I'm going to open up my little window here. Oh, wow, it's working perfect. All right, question number one. We'll try to go through at least two, maybe three. This is all good and great, but what do you suggest I do in a workplace where there isn't a concern for project management and following process from leadership? Okay, good question. I think that here's the way I would approach it. If you're having that struggle with kind of, okay, I want to institute more process and more kind of structure to the way we handle projects, do it individually. Prove it with your team or with your group that you execute well and efficiently and you win those deadlines. Doing that time and time again over the span of 6 months, a year and a half, all of a sudden now you become the heroes of an organization or a department where you're constantly executing on time, on budget, and all of a sudden that leadership they don't really care about it or don't have any interest in it, they're going to start looking to you as the subject matter expert of executing on point and on time. So take the approach of, okay, they're not supporting it, they're not behind me, I'm still going to do it because a couple reasons. You might say, well, it depends on the organization you're in, but it's still going to make you look good, not just to your stakeholders and your leadership, but to your team, that you can execute efficiently and on point. And it's going to make you a better individual in a workforce environment anyways. So, other questions? It was a good one. What do you suggest I do when I'm already engaged in a project and then I'm assigned another project? I'm always having trouble deciding whether I should hold off on starting the new project. Okay, yeah, just overall getting swamped with projects. That's something that it comes down to triage and almost deciding which one has the most consequences of not completing. So let's say you have 10 projects and 3 of them are real small, they can be executed real quickly. I go against the trend and I say try to get those done quick, and a couple reasons why. If they are so short and quick and succinct where you can execute on those projects quickly, you can get a kind of almost a rolling out projects attitude, which can help the other projects. However, if project number 7 is like blowing up and it has to be addressed, deal the fires that are burning hottest. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but sometimes when you got 10 fires going, which one's hottest? Which one can cause the most damage to your client or your organization, and put that one out first. So yeah, it's tough. There's no answer to that one other than address the ones that are the most damaging. And hopefully they're not damaging. Hopefully they're just, this one will benefit us most. But if it's damaging, do the one that will do the most damage, finish that first. Next. this will be the last one. What do you think is the number one reason projects fail? That's a great question. I would have to say that it's planning. Again, it's a culmination of a lot of things, but without proper planning, everything's a mess. You can have a great schedule, but really no planning to support that schedule, and all your scheduled dates might be off, and your departments are going crazy because they're like, who made this schedule? So without that planning to support everything going forward, that's the most important. It's like a deck of cards. I mean, building the foundation nice and tight is the most important. So planning by far is the most important. But really, taking that political route, all of them are important. Communicating clearly, making sure that you have a good team, and that you address scope creep properly, and you're sending out those emails, the congratulate and call out Rockstars and people who just did a stellar job. That's going to help you with the next project and planning. So it's a culmination of all of them, but I think that the most important is the beginning stages of planning a project out. We're going to wrap with that for the day. If you have other questions, please go ahead and go into our insights page and just knock out a question to us, or you can email us, team@energyhill. If you want an individual question, my email is ryan@energyhill, so go ahead and send me an email. John, he was the organizer. I appreciate his help on this project today. John@energyhill. Ask us any questions, and if we can't get to them right away, give us about 24 hours, 48 hours, and we'll get you an answer. Thanks so much.